You probably could, but it would be a rare thing. You know, 1 in every 10,000 Amish is a convert. It just doesn't happen that often. So we can see that there's 2 infection strategies, vertical and horizontal. Old religions tend to use the horizontal infection strategy because they're the ones with lots of kids. But they can break out into a vertical infection strategy. Thank you for correcting me. But they can break out into the horizontal infection strategy. Look at what Catholicism is doing in South America right now. In Africa right now. Catholicism has been very vertical oriented, but now it's seeing an opportunity to break out, just like the plague did in the 1300s. It's breaking out in Africa and expanding its authority and power in a lot of African communities, because the traditional religions and the traditional tribal structures are breaking down. So there's a vacuum there. And the Pentecostals are doing the same thing. So you see Rick Warren going in and virtually endorsing the law that, you can kill homosexuals if you find them in Uganda nowadays. And that, well, I'll get back to this a little bit later. So you can see that it can break out. And look what's happening in, because the old religion, Catholicism, is so weak in South America, Pentecostals are coming in. Pentecostals are very much a horizontal infection strategy. So they're going into South America and they're having a heyday. They're eating the Catholics' lunch in Brazil. And it's scaring the Catholics big time. Well, the same thing happened, if you think about this, when a guy named Martin Luther named 95 Theses on a door. Lutheranism took Northern Europe by storm in just a few years. It went from being totally Catholic to totally Lutheran. That's really fast. And another one broke out. It's called Islam. It broke out in just 125 years, conquered all the territory that Christianity virtually had conquered in the 3rd and 4th century. I mean, think about it. All the area that it took 3 centuries of Christianity to do, Islam did in just about 100 years after it broke out of Saudi Arabia. It's just like a virus that gets, or the plague that breaks out of Africa. We think the bacillus that causes the plague has come out of Africa most of the time, somewhere in East Africa. We're not sure where, but there's a reservoir somewhere in there that it breaks out. And we see the same thing in religion. Anybody from New York in here? New York State? All right. You ever heard of the burned out district? Alan, you heard of the burned out district? You have? Okay. Good. Well, the burned out district was around the 1830s. And about every other week, a new religion was springing up. And it's these few counties up in northern New York State. And it was just one religion after another springing up. It was called burned out district because everybody had been saved by at least 5 different religions within a few years, and they kind of got burned out on religion. Well, very few of those survived. If you think about it, the number of viruses that your body produces from a cold, only an infinitesimally small fraction of those ever get to survive to the next person. If I sneeze, I may get 100 viruses on this poor gentleman here. What's your name? Well, you get religion when your rational immune system is immature. It's underdeveloped, right? Most of us, if you were indoctrinated, you get it when you're young. And that's true of a lot of diseases. You send your kids off to preschool and they come back with a cold every week. And they bring them back to you. But we don't get all the colds our kids get because we've already been exposed to them. Or we have some natural immunity to them. But the kids have not been. And that exposure is actually good for children because it teaches their immune systems how to avoid and to resist new diseases that are in their immediate environment. Well, when you're young, you get immunities. You get infected with your God virus, and then you get immunities to all the other ones around you. Who was raised Protestant in here? Okay, now keep your hands up. How many of you got taught the antibodies to Catholicism as you were being raised? Ah, look at that. What did they teach you? What did they tell you about those Catholics, those papists?
Oh, they weren't really Christians. They weren't really going to heaven.
They weren't going to heaven. They weren't really Christian. There you go. I agree. Hallelujah. They taught you right. What they teach you about those Catholics?
My grandmother went to a Catholic school when she was young and got out and preached to all of us what horrible place that was, and it was the most awful experience in her life. And
So she got the antibodies from going to the
Catholics.
Catholic. That's good. And then she
wasn't
married a Catholic here, by the way.
Her parents sent her.
Oh.
She wasn't a Catholic.
No, she wasn't, but she was. That was a good way to get the antibodies, wasn't it? So who was raised Catholic in here? All right, what were the antibodies to the Protestants? What did they tell you about those Protestants?
Oh, any other religion, just yes, that. They're not going to heaven, they're not the right religion, they're not the chosen people.
That's
They're
right.
gay, and-
Thank goodness somebody set those Protestants straight. What they teach you?
Now, they might go to heaven, but they'd have to spend a few million years in limbo.
Oh, there you go. All right, all right. Isn't that interesting? So you're getting infected with your particular God virus, even as you're getting the antibodies to all the other God viruses. Now, how many of you got the antibodies to Zoroastrianism in here? Nobody? Well, why didn't your parents and your church teach you about the antibodies for Zoroastrianism?
Because they couldn't pronounce it.
You're probably right. You're right. And I bet you didn't get the antibodies to the Baha'i faith. And you may not have even got the antibodies to the Islamic faith. Because you only get the antibodies to the viruses that are in your immediate environment. It's the same thing for cold viruses. Or, everybody was so worried about the swine flu. Well, while the swine flu is breaking out in Chile, it's not breaking out up here. So you can't get the swine flu if it's only in Chile. It has to come to your community before you can get it. Well, Islam has to come to your community, or Zoroastrianism has to come to your community before you can get it. And only then are the red flags of the immune system raised and said, oh wait, we got a new invader here. Let's teach the communities to our children. And that's what happens. Now, the big problem is coming up right now, and we see it in the news almost every day now, is the internet is allowing for the virus to be transmitted across former boundaries. Usually the only way religions could conquer new areas was with an army in front of it. I mean, that's really what happened in many cases. Well, now you don't need an army. All you have to have is the internet. You can get online. That woman who was recently convicted in Ireland, the American woman, she's going to try and murder the cartoonist. Well, she was raised here in America. She was a Protestant. What's she doing being a Muslim murderer, trying to murder somebody because she found on the internet? A lot of the issues came through the internet for her. So, what's another time you get the God virus? When you're under stress and your rational immune system is weak. That's why people say, if somebody says, I got Jesus, and they're 35 years old, ask them what's going on in their life. Well, they had a death. Their child got ill. Their parent died. Some crisis came that put them under a lot of stress. When do you get sick most often? When your body's under stress. You're under a lot of pressure at work, you get a cold. You may be a person who never gets sick, and suddenly you have a major illness, your child is sick, not of communicable disease even, but it's causing you a lot of stress, and you get the flu yourself. So that's when you tend to get religion too. I have a friend who's 35 years, former friend, 35 years old, and he and I had the greatest time. We'd go out to eat, every time I was in town, he'd been living in St.